So welcome. We are excited to talk with you today about our study on professional development incentives for Oregon's early childhood education workforce. I'm Ashley Pearson. I'm a leader in applied research and evaluation at Education Northwest. I'll have my co-authors introduce themselves. Jill.
Hi, I'm Jill Cannon. I'm a senior policy researcher at the RAND Corporation, and I'm based in Los Angeles.
And Kata, do you mind introducing yourself?
Hi, my name is Kata Mihai. I'm a senior economist also at the RAND Corporation. Thanks.
And we'd also like to acknowledge our co-authors Rachel Pereira and Rebecca LeMahieu, who couldn't join us for this presentation. In addition, we have our study partners from OCCD here as well, Sarah Myers and Pam Deerdorf. Pam, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody, and thank you for joining us. We're so excited that we're rolling this out. And I'm Pam Deerdorf. I'm the director of the Center for Career Development in Childhood Care and Education. We're located at Portland State University, and we have contract with the Early Learning Division to administer the incentives program along with the registry.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sarah Myers. I am the Oregon Registry coordinator at the Oregon Center for Career Development, working with the team that does the processing of education awards, of the Oregon Registry steps, and also training and education documents coming into ORO.
Great, thank you. And for those of you with us this morning, feel free to keep your cameras on or off. That can be completely your preference. If you have to take a break, leave early, we will not be offended. Please put clarifying questions in the chat box as we go, and we'll attempt to address those either through chat or we'll pause and respond. But please hold other questions until the end of the presentation. We're going to have some discussion time at the end. You may have already noticed we are recording this session, so we're planning to record and post the presentation portion, but we will be stopping the recording at the discussion time so we can just have a free and open discussion. And before we start, I'd like to invite everyone to introduce themselves in the chat. So feel free to put in the chat your name, your role, and your organization, just so we have a sense of who is in our virtual room. Thanks. So this study was funded through the Regional Educational Laboratory Northwest, or REL Northwest, and the REL is one of 10 regional educational laboratories across the U.S. The goal of the REL program is to help states and districts use data to address important policy issues and improve educational practices. Education Northwest holds the contract for the Northwest region, which covers the 5 Northwest states, including Oregon. And we worked in partnership with this study, as you know from our introductions, with researchers from the RAND Corporation and with the Oregon Center for Career Development, also known as OCCD. During this presentation, we'll talk through why we did the study, the design, data sources and methods, findings, implications, limitations, interpreting results at OCCD, and then we'll end with a group discussion. First, let's explore the motivation for the study. The percent of early childhood education, or ECE, teachers with at least a bachelor's degree is lower than that of elementary and middle school teachers. So only 46% of preschool teachers age 25 and older have at least a bachelor's, compared with 95% of elementary and middle school teachers. So again, 46 for preschool teachers, 95 for elementary. So pretty big disparity there. Increasing the ECE workforce education levels may result in higher quality care and better child outcomes. And so many states have adopted financial incentives that encourage participation in ECE training and workforce registry systems. A lot of states have also developed career lattice systems as well as these workforce registries. And career lattices are essentially career pathway systems that help workforce members set goals related to increasing their education. And Oregon offers many professional development opportunities for the ECE workforce. So for example, there are ECE degree programs offered at 26 different Oregon community colleges and public universities. Training options include offerings from multiple organizations, including state agencies, and can be things like in-service sessions or courses on specific topics. And now we'll talk for a moment about Oregon's ECE professional development system. Oregon stakeholders want to incentivize ECE professionals to participate in the workforce registry system and the career lattice in order to help increase education levels and to provide the state more information on current ECE workforce education levels. If individuals see that they're part of a broader professional system, know where they stand in the career lattice, and have a clear path to advance professionally, the theory is they might be more motivated to pursue education and professional development. A workforce registry allows states to monitor ECE workforce members while tracking key information. Oregon's system is known as the Oregon Registry Online, or ORO, and it collects information on things like education level, trainings, employment history, and if the person is enrolled in the career lattice, what their career lattice level or step is. Participation in the registry system is required for licensed ECE professionals in Oregon. Participation in the career lattice, however, in Oregon, the Oregon Registry steps, is voluntary. So again, the workforce registry is required and the career lattice is voluntary. More than 10,000 Oregon ECE professionals were enrolled in the registry system, but were not signed up for the career lattice as of about 2019. The career lattice in Oregon has 15 different steps, and there are essentially 3 different tracks or ways to advance on the lattice. Participants can earn degrees, credentials, or certificates in one track. Another track is to earn college course credit, and a third track is through community-based training hours. Monetary incentives, known as education awards, have been available at different steps in the lattice as well to incentivize participation. So now we'll talk for a few minutes about our study design. The study was conducted in 2018 and 2019, so we are talking about pre-pandemic times here. And it examines ways to provide an incentive and encourage participation in Oregon's career lattice and encourage increased education levels. We used 2 different randomizations to test out 3 different interventions or treatments. All of these interventions or treatments are behavioral nudges communicated through email. So 1 is an email encouraging career lattice sign up. 2, a second one was an email announcing financial incentives in the form of awards for certain education levels. And the third was an email announcing financial incentives in the form of automatic scholarship enrollment. And we'll go into more detail here. The first randomization shown here focused on the portion of the Oregon early learning workforce that is in the registry system, but not in the career lattice. So that was the group that was eligible to participate in this sign-up randomization. The intervention or treatment for this randomization was that OCCD sent emails every 3 months for a total of 5 emails during the study period to individuals who were randomly assigned to receive them, known as the treatment group. So these messages described the benefits of the career lattice and encouraged recipients to sign up for the lattice. The control group did not receive any emails from OCCD, but they could go to OCCD's website and sign up for the career lattice. So they were not restricted from doing a sign up of that. One limitation that we'd like to highlight is that we had small numbers of participants in this study, which made it harder for us to detect any statistical impacts of the interventions. So, for example, in this sign-up randomization, we had 348 participants total, which were split evenly between treatment and control groups. The second randomization, shown here on the right in blue, focused on ECE workforce members who had agreed to participate in the study and who were already in the career lattice at specific steps, at step 7, 7.5, and 8. And those steps are between a CDA, a Child Development Associate credential, which is step 7, and an associate's degree, which is step 9. OCCD had observed that workforce members tend to reach these steps, steps 7 to 8.5 below an associate's, and then often don't seem to continue their professional development, so stalling in the lattice. And so we felt like these career lattice levels were ideal to test whether additional incentives might help to encourage more professional development and more movement along the career lattice. The intervention or treatment for this randomization was, again, OCCD sending emails every 3 months for a total of 5 emails during the study. 2 individuals in the 2 different treatment groups who were randomly assigned to receive them. So one treatment group received emails offering monetary incentives at earlier than usual steps in the career lattice. So they were eligible to receive monetary incentives at step 7.5, 8, and 8.5, rather than having to wait until they reached an associate's degree at step 9. These earlier incentives were $100 at each of those earlier steps for a maximum amount of $200 received. Those emails also provided some information about college coursework and training that was available. The other treatment group received emails letting them know they had been automatically enrolled in a community college scholarship, and the scholarship would pay for up to 6 credits per term, and described how they could register for their courses. The control group for this randomization didn't receive any emails, but they were eligible to receive the monetary incentive of $200 if they hit step 9, which again is an associate's degree. And the control group could also choose to enroll in the scholarship through OCCD's website. So again, the control group did not get any emails, but they weren't restricted from doing these things on their own or restricted from the typical benefits that were offered. And overall, our goal, again, with this study was really to test whether these treatments were leading to more engagement with the career lattice and helped to increase the education levels and the training of this workforce. We again had small numbers of participants in this randomization, unfortunately, which made it harder to detect any impacts. So we had 244 participants split evenly between the 3 groups. I'm going to pause here because I know this diagram has a lot of different boxes. Are there any clarifying questions that people have on the design that we could address right now? All right, well, feel free to put them in the chat if they occur to you, because we want to make sure that this makes sense before we dive into the findings. I will briefly talk through data sources and methods. We used 4 different data sources: Oregon Registry administrative data, survey data, email distribution data, and interviews. Our methods included regression analysis comparing participant outcomes across groups, calculating percentages from email platform and survey data, and doing qualitative content analysis of interview and survey data. Now I'll hand it over to Jill, who will walk us through the findings.
Thanks, Ashley. So with that nice setup, let's jump into what we found. Our first research question asked, did sending emails impact sign up for the career lattice or workplace retention of the same workplace? So think of the left hand, the green side of the figure that Ashley just walked through. We found that emails encouraging the early childhood workforce members who were not already in the career lattice to sign up for it did not result in a detectable impact on either sign up or workplace retention. That is, there were no statistically significant differences between the treatment and control groups in either the rate of sign up or the rate of workplace retention during our particular study period. Specifically, we found that about 19% of the treatment group and 15% of the control group signed up for the career lattice during this time. For our second research question, we switched to a focus on those early childhood workforce members who were already enrolled in the lattice. So this is the right-hand side or the blue side of the earlier figure. And we asked, did sending emails coupled with a monetary incentive impact outcomes, including the number of training hours recorded, number of college credit hours, career lattice movement or moving up a step, or workplace retention? And we found that providing access to that monetary incentive of up to $200 earlier than usual, so before step 9, had a statistically significant positive impact on training hours that were recorded by participants. But sending emails had no detectable impact on career lattice movement, college credit hours earned, or workplace retention. On average, the treatment group had 10 more community-based training hours than the control group. So looking at the top number in the first 2 columns of the table here, that's about 42 hours compared with 32 hours in this study period. And that's a statistically significant and meaningful difference. For our third research question, now focusing on the scholarship intervention, for those who were already in the lattice, we wanted to know, did sending emails coupled with this automatic enrollment in a scholarship program impact outcomes, including scholarship use, so the receipt of money for the scholarship, career lattice movement, number of college credit hours, or workplace retention? And here we found no statistically significant differences between the treatment and control groups in these outcomes during the study period. Overall rates of scholarship use were low among both the treatment and the control groups, between about 3 and 6%. We also explored several secondary outcomes for the incentive interventions, namely, did they influence participants' identification as an early learning professional, their reported motivation to take college coursework in the next year or the next 5 years, or reported motivation to earn a degree or ECE-related certification in the next 5 years. And motivation was measured as whether survey respondents reported a high or very high level of motivation. As shown in this table, we found that the scholarship emails had a statistically significant and meaningful positive impact on motivation to take a college course in the next year and the next 5 years, as well as motivation to earn a degree or certification in the next 5 years. We didn't find a detectable impact on an increase in identification as an early learning professional. So looking at the first row of this table, it shows that about 54% of the treatment group compared with about 31% of the control group reported being motivated to take a course in the next year. Moving down, 54% also reported being motivated in the next 5 years, compared with 41% in the control group. And then 56% of the treatment group reported they were motivated to complete a degree or certification in the next 5 years, compared with about 44% of the control group. I'll add a caveat to these findings. Unfortunately, only about 60% of the original group took our second survey, our follow-up survey, and there were response rate differences between the treatment and control groups in this. So therefore, these results should be interpreted with caution, and you'll see that our sample size was down to 87 for these survey responses. While we can't be as confident in these findings, these results can be viewed as promising because they suggest that a number of early childhood workforce members are expressing motivation to continue their education in the next several years, especially those who receive the automatic scholarship enrollment information. And finally, for our last research question, we looked at implementation. So to what extent were the email campaigns for both the Career Lattice sign-up and incentive interventions implemented as intended? We saw that the email campaigns were well implemented. Although because of a state policy change, the interventions ended sooner than planned. They ended after about 12 months rather than 16 months as originally intended. Most treatment group participants opened at least one email they received. However, only 1/4 to 1/3 clicked on a link embedded within the email to get more information. Overall, OCCD staff members reported that they believed the interventions were straightforward to administer, and they didn't increase staff burden because of the administration processes and systems they had established from the beginning. That is, they were using existing administrative data, database systems, and email systems to do this. On further reflection, after the email campaigns ended, OCCD staff members noted that the emails could have been better designed to elicit opening and clicking for further information. For example, by including more personalized information, perhaps. And the unanticipated shortening of the study period by 4 months exacerbated concerns regarding the original time frame that was shorter than ideal. OCCD staff members said that this type of intervention would ideally be fielded for at least 2 years to have an opportunity to show impact. The limited time frame made it unlikely that the study would find impact on participants' progress through certain career lattice steps or plans for returning to college, both of which can take multiple years. The study found that emails induced changes in professional development attainment, but were not sufficient to induce changes in career lattice sign-up or scholarship use, at least in the short term. And these findings suggest the following implications for research and practice. We identified several areas where additional research could be beneficial. First, Oregon could consider using interviews or survey research to better understand the barriers to enrolling and progressing in the career lattice. In this study, we didn't explore the potential difficulties faced in accessing and engaging with the lattice, such as the application process. And more research is also needed to explain why some workforce members choose to increase their education despite low compensation in the field, and how shifting education requirements and other state policy changes influence these decisions. Future impact studies could investigate whether more intensive behavioral nudges or behavioral nudges that are delivered through alternative methods, such as text messages or social media, would encourage workforce members to increase their education and training. While we saw some positive findings, for the most part, the study findings suggest that light touch behavioral nudges might not be enough to induce the changes in career lattice sign up and continuing post-secondary education we looked at. And research can also examine whether monetary incentives or scholarships alone are effective in Oregon, and at what levels of financial support they are most effective. Finally, longer implementation might be needed to test education outcomes. Outcomes such as course credits require at least one college term to be completed, and a longer implementation and study period might be needed to really test the effectiveness of an email campaign like this. For practice implications, our findings suggest a need for better messaging and information about the workforce registry, lattice, and available financial incentives and scholarships. The findings also suggest some of the qualitative findings that additional supports such as release time might help ECE workforce members attend college and overcome barriers such as a lack of time to participate in professional development. And OCCD might want to consider email alternatives, text messages or social media, in communicating with the early childhood workforce. These alternative methods might be effective at reaching this population, or more effective, or reaching particular segments of the workforce. Lastly, future email campaigns could use different messaging techniques. This in order to increase the probability of the workforce receiving and absorbing the information. Based on our study, we've come up with some suggestions. Emails might benefit from simplified language and timely content to get attention, using personalized messages such as step level or the number of training hours needed to get to the next step, translation into recipient's primary language, thinking about extending beyond English and Spanish, and more widely recognized logos and names to increase trust in the content and get people to open and click. And now we have a question for you to think about related to this. Would you add anything to this list based on your experiences communicating with this workforce? Do you think email is still a good way to reach this workforce, or have you tried other methods that have proved successful? So I just want you to feel free to put your quick thoughts in the chat as you think about that, and we can return to this in the discussion. Finally, we faced several study limitations, some of which we've already mentioned, so I'll note them here. There were some concerns about the representativeness of our study population to the overall Oregon early childhood workforce. We had small sample sizes and a high rate of survey non-response. We weren't able to directly talk to early childhood professionals for this particular study to get their perspectives, and we had the short study timeline, and that was shortened even further, as I mentioned. And now I'd like to turn this over to Sarah Myers at OCCD before we turn to the larger discussion.
Thank you, Jill. I'm going to be walking through how OCCD has taken the results and started some changes to be able to have better practice with our communications. In addition to what I'll share of what we have already implemented, keep in mind that these results will also be used to work towards reinstilling the education awards in the future and any scholarship programs that we might have coming up in the future. We'll take the results and any feedback that you provide to us today to really dig deep into how we can really make sure that we're getting these incentives and scholarships out to people effectively. So based on the results, we have definitely adopted a full launch of being able to have providers and educators upload their STEP application or education award eligibility form directly into Oro. That started in January 2020. With that reduces the barrier of printing and paying for postage, mailing times, and also delayed communications from the registry if the applications were coming in through mail. The upload is touched within 24 hours of it getting into somebody's account, and they are receiving messages quite soon after that saying that we've received your application and it's in processing. In addition to that, we are working on a feature in Oro that will have the STEP application information directly in the individual's Oro account. So it will reduce the need for even creating a PDF, filling out the PDF and uploading. The STEP application in Oro will automatically pre-populate the information from somebody's account, and they can just go through a series of questions, click submit, and then they will have their application, excuse me, in a queue for us to process. So that will simplify things even more here coming up in the future. To reduce the barrier of paperwork, we're exploring having the reduction of a W-9 for the education award process. In the past, we have had it as a fillable paper that or a hard copy paper that they would need to submit to us. With the most recent return of education awards, they had to go through a PaymentWorks portal to get that information digitally. And now we're looking towards, do we even need to go through that process, or can we use the information we have already to just process a payment for somebody and get that payment to them in an efficient and quick manner. And then additionally, we have really tried to increase our resources and technical assistance efforts for providers and educators who speak a language other than English. And this has resulted in having more upfront supports, and then also creating resources, handouts, by step-by-step guides of how to go through the process so that they can have that on their own and be able to confidently go through the process of submitting. Next slide, thank you. So I wanted to highlight that we really did take the results and try to implement them when we did bring the education awards back January of this year through June. So we have, we instilled two groups who were receiving email communications about the education award return. So there was a group of individuals who were active in Oro, and they all received a general notification about who was eligible and what it took to apply. And then the other group was individuals who were eligible for the award and they had not applied yet. And it gave them instructions on how to apply and how to either apply for a STEP or apply for their education award so that they could get their payment. Those emails came out multiple times to them. I think they came out pretty much every few weeks. They got a new email saying, hey, you're still eligible, please apply. We want to make sure that we get these funds to you. And then as you can see from the positive effects on bullet point number 2, between January and June of this year, we received just over 1,800 applications compared to the 1,100 that we received in the same time range in 2018. So those more consistent and concise messages through email, we did see a higher rate of people applying. So some other things that we are really tweaking with our messaging is we are doing our best to make sure that emails are sent in the educator's preferred language. We are making sure that the sender is the Oregon Registry compared to an individual's name. We've found that having the general Oregon Registry name will catch somebody's eye, and they're more likely to click that email and open it up compared to such as like my name. So the Oregon Registry is more likely for them to click. We're using positive and uplifting statements in the subject line, such as the Oregon Registry step awarded. Again, I mentioned the email content is clear and concise with instructions that they can easily follow. It gives that email a purpose for them. Let's see. Additionally, we're using the branded colors and logos. So our OCCD logo or the ORO logo is going in all of our emails, and the department colors. So the purple color is being used for branding. This has led to an average of 80% of people opening up the emails, which is an increased rate compared to the emails that we were sending in the past, with at least 50% of people clicking on the links that we have in the emails. So we not only know that they're opening them, but they're engaging with the content that's in there. Additional email communications to educators that we are starting. So now we have ORO disapprovals. So these disapproval messages are coming out of ORO now compared to being printed and mailed. And that's for training and education documents that have been submitted to us that don't meet the training and education criteria. So people are receiving that via email. And also for incomplete applications, we're emailing out for that as well.
Great. Thank you, Sarah, for walking through that. It's so interesting to be able to get a sense as a researcher to see, you know, what, how people can actually use findings and how that's been going at OCCD. So at this time, we'll turn to our discussion. We'll also stop our recording. So